let's get started. Let's jump right in. So what I was thinking, since it's eclipse season today, I was thinking we would start today's session with a little bit of centering and connecting to our bodies, since I've been feeling a lot of this like energy move through me, and in particular feeling a little bit overwhelmed and feeling a lot of pressure. And I don't know if any of you have been feeling something similar, but if you have, then this should be a really great way to start today's session, so we can actually get present and get focused on what we want to connect with during eclipse season. Does that sound like a good idea? Is anybody on board? Okay, so one thing I want you to do is to just get really comfortable wherever you are, wherever you're sitting. Just take a deep breath and just maybe close your eyes as well, and just let yourself be. Just sit and let yourself be for just a moment. And then maybe check in with yourself and see what you came here for today. Like, why are you here watching this webinar? And if you're watching this as a recording, feel free to join us in this centering as well. And just check and see what's your motivation to be here today, and what is it that you want to get. And then just welcome that. Welcome whatever comes up, whatever sounds, whatever sensations, whatever pictures come up in consciousness. Just welcome what it is that motivate you to be here today. And then again, can you just allow yourself to simply be? Just let yourself be. And just let your body drop into itself. Let the mind drop into the body. Let your breathing be natural and organic. And just allow yourself to simply be. Okay. Very good. So whenever you're ready, feel free to open your eyes again. Okay. And so, so just check in and see how many of you are curious about the upcoming eclipses that are starting next week. How many of you, and you can either raise your hand or you can write in the chat window, just say, okay. I guess that's why most of you are here. And then how many of you have personal planets or points in Gemini, Sagittarius, Cancer, or Capricorn? So if you have your birth chart in front of you, maybe just check. Just check to see, like, is there any Gemini stuff? Okay, let me just actually, somebody raised their hand. Wonderful. Sagittarius, Cancer, Capricorn. Okay, Jazz has the moon in Gemini. Beautiful. Okay. Jason says, I have important planets in all of those. Could you please tell us the degrees for each sign? Yes, I will in a moment. Yes, thanks, Jason, for mentioning that. We will definitely talk about the degrees. Denise, rising in Sag. Okay. Ari has Jupiter in Cancer, right? And the MC, and Mercury in Gemini, as well as Sun, Mars in Gemini. Yeah, so you've got lots going on. Very good, very good. Awesome. All right. So before we get into more detail, let me just say thank you for being here, whether you're watching this as a recording or whether you're watching this live. So yeah, so thanks for being here, and thanks for your time. And as I always do at the beginning of every webinar, I just mention a little bit about myself for those of you who don't know me yet, or for those of you who are new. most of you do already know me. So feel free to grab a glass of water in the meantime if you don't want to listen to it again. But basically, I'm originally from Austria, from Vienna, and I've lived in the United States for over 20 years. And I've basically learned and studied astrology in America, in New York. I started out in New York and had mentors there, and I took lots of courses and classes and lots of books, read lots of books. And so, yeah, and then I got certified in 2005, and I started doing full-time astrology consultations in 2010. So it's been a while. I've been doing this now full-time for 10 years. And it's been a really beautiful journey, I have to say, and I've learned so much. Oh my God. I think one of the reasons why I love astrology so much and love also teaching it and connecting with other people around it is because I learn so much in turn as I'm teaching and as I'm giving readings. I learn just as much from all you guys and from connecting with everybody. And so it's a really beautiful gift to me. And I want to thank you for that, because, you're the reason why this has been such a fulfilling, career for me so far. So thanks for that. And then, of course, today we're going to talk about, the lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, which will be in 15.5 degrees of Sagittarius Gemini. Then we'll also talk about the solar eclipse in Cancer in connection with our birth charts, which will be exact on June 21st, which that will be exact in 0 degrees of Cancers. And for those of you who've watched my forums many times know that 0 degrees is a very heightened degree. It's an important degree, especially in a cardinal sign, which Cancer is. So it's all about new beginnings in some way, like something's like opening up, right? So we'll talk more about that in a moment. But then the lunar eclipse in Capricorn, which is exact on July 5th, which is the last one of the eclipses, and also which kind of like sums up the Cancer Capricorn polarity of eclipses that we've been experiencing since the beginning of 2019. So that will be the last of all of these eclipses for quite a while, for like 18 or 19 years. And that one is on July 5th in 13.5 degrees of Capricorn. So that's what we're going to cover today. If I have your chart already, it is somewhere here in my pile of charts, and I will be able to answer questions that you have. I'm going to try and answer questions towards the end of the webinar because we have so much to cover with 3 eclipses. There's a lot to talk about. And yeah, if I don't have your chart, then if you can just mention, positions, planets and degrees and houses and such, and then I will do my best to answer your question. And if there's anything that takes a little bit too much time, I'm going to invite you to book a reading with me. All right. So all that said, yeah, well, obviously we want to talk about stuff that's connected to what we're covering today with the eclipses, since that's going to be of interest to everybody. Yeah, so let's move to the next slide. Usually eclipse season will bring up stuff to the surface, and will create sort of like a heightened sense of, sometimes it can be anxiety that gets created. It can be a heightened sense of like feeling in sort of like a place of uncertainty with eclipses. So we definitely need to take care of ourselves really, really well right now. And I've been feeling a little bit of overwhelm, and I'll talk a little bit about why that is in a moment. Let me just switch to the next slide here. So this is the overview for 2020, June in particular, and all of you should have that in your emails that I sent out as an attachment. And if you look at what's happening in June, we can see very clearly we have a lot of stuff going on in June, right? I mean, eclipse season is still going on until July 20th. Then, of course, Mercury is entering its pre-shadow phase on June 2nd, which is not too long from now. Then we have the eclipse on June 5th. Then Mercury will enter its station phase on June 9th, which means it's slowing down, right, and becoming more exalted in the sky. Neptune is also going to start its station phase on June 12th. Venus will also start to station again on June 12th. So you can see there's a lot of stations, one after another again. So this was something we already experienced in May, but now in June, there's just other planets that are stationing, but another, row of planets stationing and being more exalted in the sky. And then we'll have Mercury will go retrograde on June 18th. We'll have the summer solstice on the 20th. And of course, right after the summer solstice, only 8 hours later, we'll have the solar eclipse in 0 degrees of Cancer. And that's very powerful because when you have a solar eclipse right after a solstice, because solstices are turning points, they're the switch of seasons, right? And so they have a lot of energy to them. And this is also why in the old days, people used to celebrate solstices. They had like rituals and things that they would do. They would pray, or they would dance, or they would, set intentions for the next season, right? And so solstices are definitely a great time to set intentions. And then, of course, since we also have a solar eclipse very close to the solstice, that's going to be an extra potent time for setting intentions. We do want to remember, though, with any eclipse, especially with any solar eclipse, we want to wait with setting intentions a little bit, because the energies are too strong, because an eclipse is a download. It's an energy download. And because we're in eclipse season already, we're experiencing these energy downloads right now. And they will last until July 20th. So we're really in this soup of energy just moving through us. And I like to compare it to like a computer upgrade, right? Like when you upgrade your computer, you sometimes need to wait a little bit before you can use the computer again, before it's functioning properly again. So during that time of upgrading, you need to take sort of like a deep breath and go, okay, all is well. I'm going to be okay. Everything will be fine. Once I'm upgraded, everything will look very different. So it's a little bit like that, right? So we want to take a deep breath during eclipse season whenever possible or whenever needed. And of course, with these particular eclipses, what I've noticed looking at all three of the charts is, and we will actually do that together as well. We'll look at the three charts briefly together as well. There's a lot of emphasis on this Mars placement. Mars plays a really big role in all three eclipses. And so because Mars plays a big role, of course, Mars is also connected to Chiron very strongly right now and for the next 6 years, because Chiron is in Aries and Mars rules Aries. So Chiron has a little bit of a wounded feel to it. I mean, Mars has a little bit of a woundedness around it right now with Chiron being in Aries. And so we need to be extra gentle with ourselves when it comes to Mars issues, right? When it comes to anger issues, when it comes to identity issues, what we feel identified with, our ego, our passions for life, what we want to go after, our masculine energies, right? So we want to be very gentle and compassionate with ourselves with anything that's connected to Mars, because there's a need for healing that's needed right now, individually speaking and collectively speaking for all of us, right? So we'll talk a little bit more of that as we talk about the eclipses. But so let me just talk a little bit more here with after the solar eclipse, Neptune goes retrograde. Then we have Venus going direct. Then we have Mars entering Aries. Now that's a big one too, right? Because Mars will be in Aries for 6 months, which is very unusual because of its retrograde phase. And Mars usually is in a sign for 2 months. So you can see it's like 3 times as long, right? It will be in there for 6 months. We'll have this retrograde phase in Aries in September, October, November. And so there's going to be a lot of stuff that we have to work through, since Mars is also connected to the wounded healer. So there's a lot of healing that needs to happen around the masculine energies this year. And we will start to feel that already once Mars moves into Aries. And for us on an individual basis, we have to look to see where is that in our chart, right? Where is the healing that needs to happen? And of course, we'll talk a lot more about that as well in another forum when we talk about Mars and Aries, when we talk about the retrograde phases and all that. It's not in the next forum, but I think it will be the forum after that, in August, I think. All right, so then we have Chiron starts its station phase as well at the end of June 29th until July 21st. So we're going to talk about Chiron station phase in our next forum. And that, of course, is also going to be highly important, because that's the wounded healer, and that's also connected to that Mars energy. So it's all about this, like, needing to heal right now, needing to give ourselves the space and the love and the compassion to be able to heal, right? And it's not always easy to do that, because we also might, feel triggered. We also might feel, like lacking in some way, or feeling insecure in some way. So that can bring up all sorts of stuff, of course, for a lot of people. And the less conscious you are about this, the more triggered you're going to be, and the more insecure you're going to feel. And so the more unpleasant that will be. And for those of us who have tools and have the ability to ask for support, and have the ability to do coaching or releasing, or, the ability to use your own tools that you have in your own toolbox to take care of yourself and to be more conscious with what the energies are doing. Astrology is also one of those tools that helps us with that, right? Then we can use the energy a little bit better. We can actually do that healing more consciously and more fully. Now, there's also going to be a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction at the end of June. So that will be, of course, the second one of 3 this year. And that will give us a sense of, like, okay, where are we at? Are we in alignment with where we started in April, right? Like, because in April 4th was the first one. This will be the second one in the end of June. The third one will be November. So again, there's a need to still dig more deeply into our belief systems, and dig more deeply into what it is that we're needing to transform, or that we're needing to let go of, or that we're needing to shift in terms of our perspectives, right? And then, of course, in July, we have the last lunar eclipse in 13.5 degrees of Capricorn. And so that will then be the last one, and then eclipse season will end on July 20th, right? And in the meantime, Chiron will go retrograde, Mercury will go direct. So again, there's a lot of shifting of planets happening. So there's a lot of layers with this here, right? I mean, you can see there's a lot of layers. So this is June 5, which is next week, right? So if we take a quick look at the lunar, you can see here, right, how the moon nodes are in 29 degrees of Gemini Sagittarius. Then we have the Sun and Venus conjunct here, opposing the moon in 15.5 degrees of Sagittarius here. And then if we look here, you can see here that both the moon and the Sun and Venus are pointing towards Mars, right? So, and this means this is a T-square. So we have Mars conjunct Neptune, and Mars in particular being very strongly in T-square with this eclipse. And that means that our physical body, our masculine energies, our doing energies are going to feel very much stressed. We're going to feel the stress because Sagittarius and Gemini are social energies. They are masculine energies. They are movable energies that want to be constantly in movement. So we want to be in movement. We want to be doing things. We want to be connecting and talking and exploring. And Mars in Pisces is in a sign that wants to go within, that wants to stay still, that wants to be quiet, that wants to be present. but it's going to be very difficult to be present. And I think we're already feeling that because Mars is, of course, already in Pisces, and you know, the Sun and Venus are already in Gemini. So we're already feeling this one of the squares at least. And with the Moon meeting this degree on Friday, on June 5th, you know, that will get even more exalted. This energy of like stress around being present. It's going to be difficult to be present. It's going to be difficult to have peace and to feel connected with your intuitive self. And so we really want to pay attention to that, because this is what's going to help us, you know, really deal with this opposition, you know, because this opposition here is what keeps us very sort of like busy and constantly in movement. And so if we give ourselves moments or pockets of time where we can just be still, where we can meditate, where we can do nothing, where we can just breathe, you know, stuff like that. That's why I wanted to start out today's session with getting centered, you know, within ourselves, because this is very important right now, right? And Mars has a very strong emphasis. People are feeling frustrated, right? There's a frustration with Mars. And there's an anxiety that we're also experiencing with Pisces very often, right? If Mars is in Pisces and we're not using that energy to tune in and to be intuitive with ourselves and to stop and slow down, right? We're going to feel very anxious and frustrated, right? So there's this anxiety and this frustration. So that said, you know, the empty leg, and for those of you who watched the lunar eclipse video, you know some of this already, right? Which is that the empty leg is in Virgo. So we want to bring this Mars Neptune energy into the Virgo house or into the Virgo sign. And Virgo is about discernment. It's about daily routines, work routines, health routines, workout routines. So we want to bring this ability to be intuitive into our day-to-day. We want to bring that, and we want to make sure that we use intuition and discernment equally, that we have some clarity and that we have some, before we make a choice, before we take an action, right? Because Mars is about action. Before we take a blind action, to be discerning and saying, what's going on here? Let me stop for a second and let me look at what is working and what is not working here. What am I doing here? Right? So discernment is having clarity, and it requires us to be non-judgmental and to be neutral, right? So let's take a look at this eclipse here, because I just want to briefly look at all of the eclipses so we can get a sense for the energy flow throughout these eclipses here. So the next one is the solar eclipse. And of course, I will be recording videos for each of the eclipses as well. So you have that to watch and to use the coaching questions. And I do want to encourage you guys to really use the coaching questions of these videos during eclipse season, because these coaching questions can really ground you and can really connect you to what's going on and to how to manage, you know, all of these energies as best as possible. And it will also kind of take you out of your head and maybe put you a little bit more into a receptive place of like investigating these energies, right? Okay, so as we can see here with this solar eclipse on June 21st, which is 2 weeks after the lunar eclipse, there's still a square to Mars, right? So this doesn't go away. We still have Mars squaring the sun and the moon because they're in such an early degree, and this is in such a later degree. So again, we have this square, and of course, Mars also is going to square the moon nodes, right? Because the moon nodes are in 29 degrees of Sagittarius and Gemini. So whenever a planet squares the moon nodes, whether that's in your natal chart or whether that's in a transit chart or whether that's in a lunation chart, you know, like a new moon or full moon chart, it indicates that this is that planet that squares the moon nodes needs to be integrated and needs to be looked at. We need to have the ability to work with that energy in a healthy way, so that we can come back to the moon nodes and work with the moon nodes. But the planet that squares the moon nodes requires our attention. And if we use the empty leg, of course, that will give us sort of like a support system as well, in terms of how to work with that energy in a more balanced way, right? Because we will feel some stress here. So again, the solar eclipse, again, will have stress on Mars, on the masculine energies. So let's take a look at the last eclipse, which is again a lunar eclipse on July 5th, again 2 weeks later after the solar eclipse. And that last eclipse, again, you can see, because it's in Cancer Capricorn, right? Again, it's there's a square to Mars Chiron. So Mars will already be in Aries at this point. So it's no longer in Pisces, which has a very different feel to it, because Pisces is a little bit more, can be more like unconscious stuff, right? Unconscious stuff that we're feeling and maybe not completely in touch with. So it could be anxiety, it could be overwhelm, it could be feeling really tired, feeling really drained, right? But when Mars is in Aries, it's very active, because Aries is a very active masculine energy. So it's in its own sign, so it feels very comfortable there as well, right? So we definitely have this sense of like feeling really like strong and like courageous and like, let's go, you know. But of course, with Chiron in the picture as well, there is again this sense of like, there needs to be some healing around the masculine. So we're feeling that the very strongest during the last eclipse in July, right after, you know, July 4th. And that means we need to really look, the empty leg with this would be connected to Libra, right? Because opposite of Aries is Libra. And so we need to allow ourselves to have balance in our lives, because that Aries energy is going to be like, boom, let's just go for it, right? It's going to be very active. And then, of course, we will feel a lot of frustration, because we're going to want to go faster than what is possible, really, because Moon in Capricorn and the Sun in Cancer, they're going to want us to kind of like take our time and assess safety, you know, assess what's safe, what's not safe. You know, they want us to assess, you know, what works, what doesn't work, what's doable. So we're having, on the one hand, this like assessment energy with Mars in Aries, which is like impulsive. It's like, let's go, let's do this. Who cares? I'm frustrated. I've had enough. Let's do it, right? So we'll see how that plays out on the world stage. Of course, there might be, you know, we might see on the world stage some intense things unfolding. You know, could be more of what we're seeing right now, but in a more, maybe more, even more aggressive way. So yeah, I mean, obviously we don't know as astrologers how things play out. We just know the energies and we know the challenge. So the challenge for us individually, since we can only focus on ourselves and we don't have control over what happens in the outside world, obviously. So let's take the focus back on, what do I have control over? What can I focus on with these eclipses, right? And of course, the balance here is Libra. So allowing yourself to contribute to others and let others contribute to you, allowing yourself to find balance in your life, you know, where you're not zooming too much ahead in one direction and leaving everything else behind, where you're allowing yourself to just check in with yourself as well and see, you know, like, am I Am I doing what I need to be doing for me and for others? So all of these things we have control over, right? So that's something that we can engage with. And again, use the coaching questions from that video when I record that and when I post that for you guys. All right. Okay, so let's go to our own charts, because of course, when we look at our own charts, that's going to be the most valuable. So take your own birth charts, because what we're really interested in, of course, with these eclipses is how is this going to impact each one of us personally, and what can we do for in our own lives to navigate through these eclipses and see what that might be about for us. And of course, we're not going to be able to say 100% how it's going to play out, like with anything astrology. We're just reading energy, right? But we can get a sense, right? And getting a sense is really valuable, because when you get a sense for something, you can start to kind of like relax into that a little bit, right? Okay. All right. So let's see. So everybody has their chart in front of you. You all have you. And if you watch this as a recording, please pull up your own birth chart as well. If you don't have your own birth chart, you can go to astro.com and get a chart online, a free chart. Or if you've done a reading with me in the past, then I can send you your birth chart as well. Or you can do a reading with me and I can send you your birth chart. All right. So let's take a look here. So this is astro.com chart. This is the astro.com chart, and this is the time passages chart. They're both my charts. I just usually pull up two charts so that you can see how it can look a little bit different. Different systems or different computer programs just make the charts look a tiny bit different. But in essence, they're the same chart. And then we'll take a look at where all the eclipses land in our chart, right? Because the first eclipse is the Sagittarius Gemini eclipse, right? Sagittarius lunar eclipse. And so we want to look for where is 15.5 degrees of Sagittarius and Gemini in our chart, right? So take a look where you find that in your chart, and let me pull up a bi-wheel here real quick so you guys can see what that looks like. So this is a bi-wheel chart that shows us the transits at the time of the lunar eclipse on top of my natal chart. So this is my natal chart in the middle here, and on the wheel outside of it are the transits of the lunar eclipse. And then the very outside is again my birth chart and my houses, right? So what we can see here is that 15.5 degrees of Gemini and Sagittarius lands in my 2nd and 8th house, right? And so what's important with that is that we wanna know like what area of life, first of all, is impacted, right? Once we understand what area of life is impacted, we also want to take a look and see, well, where are some of my natal planets that are connected to this lunar eclipse, right? So with Sagittarius Gemini, the planets that we're interested in is Jupiter, right? Because Jupiter rules Sagittarius. And Gemini, we're interested in Mercury because Mercury rules Gemini. So where is Mercury and Jupiter in our natal chart? Because Mercury and Jupiter also will have an impact on what's happening with this eclipse. Does that make sense, guys? And then the third thing we want to look at is, do we have planets in our chart, especially personal planets like the Sun, Moon, Venus, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn? Like, do we have any of those planets that are connecting with the eclipse degrees? And so I'm going to now answer Jason's questions about the orbs and about the degrees, right? So because the eclipse is a very strong full moon, a very strong lunation, we actually make the distance that it impacts other planets in our chart bigger. So it's not just 2 degrees like we have with a usual new moon or full moon. It will be 5 degrees. So anything that's within 5 degrees of 15.5 degrees, so basically 10 degrees to 21 degrees of a sign. And in particular, we want to look at the mutable signs because those will be the most impacted, right? So mutable signs are Sagittarius and Gemini. and Pisces and Virgo. So if we have any planets, personal planets, or an ascendant or a career point in mutable signs of 10 to 21 degrees, then we need to take a look at that as well. So let's start from the beginning, right? We have three things we're going to look at: the house placement, the natal Jupiter, the natal Mercury, and are there planets in mutable signs in 10 to 21 degrees. So let's start with the first, house placement. House placement, in my case, second house and eighth house, right? So you got to take a look at where is 15.5 degrees of Sagittarius. So depending on what kind of chart you have, you will either see, you will either see that this is inside a house like this, or you will, it will look a little bit different, like the astro.com chart looks a little bit different. But anyways, kind of like take a look at the house placement, because that's the balance that needs to be created. There's a balance that we need to bring into alignment. And of course, second and eighth house, for example, would be my personal resources, second house, my personal self-worth, my talents, my connection with myself, honoring me, right? And the eighth house would be other people's resources, other people's talents, intimate relationships with other people, shared emotional connections that we have, deep, like intimate connections that we have with others. And this is, when I say intimate connections, it doesn't have to be a physical intimate connection. It can be an emotionally intimate connection, right? So you can have intimate connection not just with your romantic partner. You can have intimate connection, with people that you work with as well. Like, especially if you're a therapist or a coach, right? Then the eighth house is probably a house that you very much connect with other people, right? So when I do one-on-one sessions with people, coaching sessions or readings, that's an eighth house relationship that I have with people, right? Because it's intimate, right? There's an intimate connection that I forge with people. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is pull out the chart that has the houses on it that were attached to the email as well. And actually, let me pull that up real quick here as well, so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is the houses chart, and take a look. What are the two houses that needs to be balanced and integrated, right, with this lunar eclipse? And just remember, this lunar eclipse is the first eclipse of a row of eclipses that will happen in Sagittarius Gemini. So we will be dealing with probably those houses for quite a while. So for me, second and eighth house will be something that will be, that I will need to deal with until, 2022. And so there's a balance that I need to be creating there. And in particular, of course, with Sagittarius being on the south node as well, right? It's very important that we listen very carefully to the stories that we tell ourselves. And if I go back to this lunar eclipse chart here, and if we look at our natal Jupiter and natal Mercury, right? Listen very carefully, right? Wherever you have Mercury, you need to practice listening, right? Wherever you have Jupiter, you need to be conscious. What are some of the stories that you have, or belief systems, right? Stories and belief systems is sort of like similar. What are your life stories, life philosophies? What are your belief systems that you have in that particular area of life or in that sign, right? So in my case, Jupiter is in the fourth house, which is connected to family, with upbringing. My mother, it's connected to my own personal emotional safety, feeling safe in the world. And it's an Aquarius, so it's connected to groups of people or like-minded people as well. Like-minded people to me are like family. So there is there's these stories that I have about that, right? That friends are more like family than my actual family, let's say, right? So that would be one of the stories, right? And so I need to take a look at that and be really conscious. When do I tell myself that, or in what ways do I tell myself that story? Is that a story that feels good to me, or is that a story that actually makes me feel a little bit disempowered, right? And of course, right now with Jupiter, transiting Jupiter being conjunct Pluto, we need to really take a look at these stories that feel disempowering to us right now. What are we telling ourselves about life, about the world, about ourselves, about other people? You know, that's very important. So with this eclipse in particular, of course, we're getting to really see that. And we need to be aware of the stories that we tell ourselves. And we also need to be aware of where we feel overwhelmed, or where we feel that we need to kind of like also take a break or take a rest, right? Because again, we have Mars squaring the eclipse, right? So Mars, of course, also plays a role here. And then if you look at your natal Mars, you can also see like this is where you need to kind of slow down a little bit, right? So my natal Mars is in the 4th house as well. So my 4th house is pretty much activated with this eclipse, right? With Jupiter being there and Mars being there. And then Mercury is also being activated with being in my 7th house, which means one-on-one relationships, right? So can you see, guys, how I'm connecting the dots here as I'm looking at the eclipse? Does that make sense what I'm doing here? Just want to make sure that nobody's confused. Okay, Liz is saying my chart is intercepted here, so I get confused by the houses I should be looking at. Okay, well, if you have Gemini and Sagittarius intercepted inside a house, then all you need to do is just look at that house where the energies are intercepted, right? So if you have Sagittarius, I think you're a Gemini rising sign, right? So I don't think Gemini and Sagittarius intercepted in your chart, are they? Let me take a quick look and see if I have your chart here, Liz, so I can answer that question a little bit, because I want you to be able to move forward with this, if you can. Liz, there you are. Okay. So Liz, you have Gemini on the ascendant, on the 1st house cusp, right? In 19 degrees, and you have Sagittarius on the 7th house cusp in 19 degrees, which means that the eclipse is taking place a little bit before 19 degrees, which would be in your 12th house and in your 6th house, right? Does that make sense? Because each sign has 30 degrees, right? Starts at 0 and goes all the way to the next 0 sign, right? So 0 Gemini until 0 Cancer, and that's 30 degrees, right? So from 0 to 29. So if you look at in your chart, if 19 degrees is your 1st house and 7th house cusp, then the eclipse has to be before that, right? Does that make sense, Liz? Yeah, okay, great. And then let's see, do we have any questions that I need to answer right away? Okay, we'll get to some of this other stuff later with your planets. Okay, so far so good. We understand how to connect with the houses, right, that I mentioned. And so the next step now is take a look at the planets that are within 10 to 21 degrees of the mutable signs, right? So if we look at all the Gemini planets that you have in your chart, the natal ones, and all the Sagittarian planets, I don't have any Virgo planets. I do have Pisces planets here. So we want to take a look at all those signs and see 10 to, so this is too early in degree. This is too early in degree. Venus is too early. Saturn, however, falls right into it, right? 10 to 21 degrees. So Saturn is at 20 degrees, which is still connected to that eclipse. So there is, when the eclipse falls onto Saturn, or actually it's the sun will fall onto Saturn and the moon will oppose Saturn, that means there's something in connection with the Saturn energy that needs to be looked at for this eclipse cycle. And please remember that eclipses the cycle lasts for 6 months until the next eclipse happens at the end of the year. Okay, so this is an unfolding. Eclipses are always like an unfolding of the energies. We're getting our downloads, right? And then it starts to unfold. Sometimes things can also happen right during the eclipses as well. Like things can end or begin right away. But there's also an unfolding process with eclipses as well. So if Saturn is like connected to the eclipse, that means there's either a commitment that we have to make, right? There is either needing to really take a good look, what's truthful, what works for us in that area of life, which is the 8th house, which is intimate relationships, shared resources with other people, intimate connections with other people. So what works for me, right, in that area of life? How do I best share myself? How do I best communicate and connect with other people? You know, in my coaching with other people or in my readings, how do I best, Saturn can also be connected to our long-term goals and to our career, right? So in terms of the career, like what is it that I need to look at? Where do I need to make a commitment, or where do I need to end something? You know, because Saturn can also be an ending in the sense that we need to separate something that's not working, right? So if something's not working, Saturn says no more, right? This is not working. It's not realistic. It's not truthful. You know, Saturn is very much about realism, right? But because it's in Gemini, it has to do with my communications, right? It has to do with my speaking. So we have to sort of like look at that, right? Now, some of you have been saying that you have planets in, so Saturn in 18 degrees of Sagittarius for Deb, right? So again, it's similar to Deb has her Saturn exactly opposite me, right? So that would mean that her Saturn is connected to the moon and to the south node, right? So that means that she really needs to take a look at the stories that are no longer working for her, right? The belief systems, the, you know, things that she's been like filters, you know, like Sagittarius has a lot to do with our filters, you know, our cultural conditioning, right? So there's certain filters in place. And Deb, I would probably say that your filters are also strongly connected to authority figures, right? Which could be your father or it could be your mother, but somebody in your life who's been an authority figure. There are filters in place around that for you. And so there's a need to take a look at that and be more conscious in how you work with these filters, right? How you, how aware you are that they're in place or that they're there for you and where they come from. And then maybe also learn to take responsibility for these filters, right? And maybe make a commitment towards widening your perspective and widening, you know, how you look at things, you know, when it comes to your career or when it comes to, you know, long-term goals in your life. Okay, and then I think we had somebody, Carl said Jupiter is within the orb, but Uranus is opposing, not within the orb. Okay, if it's not within the orb, you can ignore the planet. If Jupiter is within the orb, then Jupiter, of course, has to do with expansion, and it has to do with, so if your Jupiter, I think I have your chart, Carl. I think your Jupiter is it in Gemini or Sagittarius or Pisces? Where is your Jupiter, Carl? Let's see. Here's Carl. Jupiter is in Sagittarius. Okay, great. So yeah, so you have Jupiter. You have Jupiter in the same place where Deb has her Saturn, basically. So so that means that there's something that you need to look at in terms of your cultural conditioning. You know, and your philosophies and the stories that you tell yourself and how that makes you feel, as something connected with the past as well, you know, something connected maybe with your upbringing or the past, because it's connected to the moon, right? So there's something we want to take a look at here, and it's in your second house. So definitely in connection with your own talents, who you are, your self-worth, in connection with your self-worth, right? All that good stuff. Okay, so then let's move on, guys. Unfortunately, let me answer more questions later because we're only at the first eclipse, and I want to make sure we're able to look at all of the eclipses. So let's look at the solar eclipse, because that's a really important one and a really big one. We definitely want to know how this eclipse is impacting each one of us, because that's a 0 degree Cancer eclipse. And of course, 0 degree of Cancer does impact us in the way that it's kind of like, it's like a new beginning of some sort, right? There's like, the energy is like, yes, you know, where do I want safety? Where do I want to be emotionally connected? Where do I want to feel this emotional belonging of some sort? Or maybe it's connected to family. Maybe it's connected to you know, people in our lives that feel like family, or that we want to have a sense of home, a sense of security in terms of where we live or how we live, our physical home and our emotional home, right? That's sort of like the Cancer energy. And because it's in 0 degrees, we are just definitely going to feel this sense of there's something happening. We don't know what, but there's something happening in connection with the Cancer energy that we need to get to. We need to get going with something, right? There's something we need to get started with something. This is a North Node eclipse. So this means that we're really needing to make an effort to move in that direction. It's very important that we keep moving in that direction. Emotional connections, family, home. Where do we feel at home? How do we connect to family? How do we connect to our own inner home, to our own emotional body? How do we connect emotionally to ourselves? And this eclipse has a lot going on at the same time. And you'll see when you watch the video, you know, we'll have a ton of station phases with this eclipse: Neptune, Venus, Mercury. So lots of energies are exalted at that time. And Mars, of course, again, is impacted because it's squaring the moon nodes. And with this eclipse, we want to take a look at the moon, right? Our own natal moon, because our natal moon will tell us the story of, like, where are we most impacted? What's going to be most impacted for us? Or where's the new beginning happening, right? So the eclipse in my case here happens in the 9th house, very close to the 8th house cusp, but still in the 9th house. So it is connected to my ability to think big, and it has to do with my philosophies, my belief systems, maybe connected to traveling or learning something, or expanding my horizons in some way, and expanding my horizons in connection to the Cancer energy, right? Expanding my horizons in connection to family, to home, to emotional connections with other people. And because it's connected to my 1st house as well, because my moon is in the 1st house, that means that that I need to also be really expanding my horizons around myself, you know, what I'm capable of, you know, or in what ways I can take care of myself or take care of others, you know. Self-care and care is the moon as well. And mother, the moon is also the mother. So in what ways am I capable or connected to the mother energy, right? So this is definitely something that will new beginning, right, around maybe motherhood, right? So there could be a lot of ways in which we can interpret that, of course. But the other thing we want to look at is like 0 degrees, right? 0 degrees of planets. So if you have planets in 0 to 5 degrees of the cardinal signs, right, which is Cancer, Capricorn, Aries, and Libra. So 0 to 5 degrees of the cardinal signs. So as you can see here, I have Pluto in 1 degree of Libra. So Pluto is going to square this solar eclipse. So, and this is really important in my chart as well, because Pluto has a significant place in my chart because it squares my moon nodes, my natal moon nodes. So this is an important planet for me anyways. I need to be constantly transforming and constantly going deeper and looking deeper into how I empower myself within my relationships with other people, right? And so with the square to the eclipse, that is very much connected to, again, needing to look at where do I need to feel more empowered? How can I transform something that needs to be transformed in regards to family or home, right? And where can I let go of control, right? Because Pluto also has to do with us wanting to control something because we're scared. You know, there's a lot of fear with Pluto because we've been traumatized there. You know, this is trauma, or it can be trauma, right? So with trauma comes fear, PTSD, right? So there can be also this sense of needing to hold something in place so that we feel safe, so that we feel protected, right? So there's a needing to let go of that. And to just surrender, right? Let yourself surrender. With Pluto, it's very much about surrender. Okay. And then let's see, what do we have here? So Ari is saying, opposition to my sun in Gemini, I guess a moon falls into the range as well. Solar eclipse conjunct my Mercury within the range of Jupiter. Okay, so I think Ari, you were talking still about the lunar eclipse here with the sun in Gemini, right? Yeah. So the eclipse is opposing your sun, and of course the sun is on top of your sun, right? Because the eclipse is happening right around your birthday. Now, when you have a birthday right around an eclipse, that means that year in particular is very powerful because the eclipse is part of your birthday chart in a way, right? The eclipse becomes sort of like part of what you're engaging with all year long. And so this balance, you know, for you, Ari, there's a balance that needs to be created around, you know, connecting and talking and engaging, but also, you know, what do you already know, the wisdom that you've already learned from all the engaging that you've been doing over your lifetime. And then also taking a look at the stories that you're telling yourself and allowing yourself to be really conscious about, you know, what are some old, you know, like a rhetoric that you have, you know, like just some stuff that keeps coming up over and over again for you, you know, and to allow yourself to be aware of that at least, so that you can start to restructure it a little bit, right? Mercury, Jupiter is solar. Okay, got it. Yeah. No problem, Ari. Okay, so with the solar eclipse for Ari is conjunct Mercury within the range of Jupiter. Yeah. So yes, because you have your Mercury in 29 degrees, which will be on the north node, right? Your Mercury is right there. And then the MC is in 5 degrees. And Jupiter is in 6 degrees. So Jupiter is kind of still within the range because it's conjunct your MC and your Mercury. So in a way, you could say that this eclipse is like you could say it's a fresh start for you in terms of, you know, what you're going to be doing out there in the world. You know, this is an opportunity here to really focus on a fresh start, you know, to really get going with what it is that creates a certain sense of safety and a certain sense of feeling connected on an emotional level, having your own emotional safety be part of the connection that you have out there in the world with other people, you know, helping other people, but also receiving help from other people. You know, the thing with Cancer is something that we have to understand is that Cancer is very much a two-way street. That's why the symbol goes both ways, right? We have this like a 6 and a 9 basically, or two sixes that sort of like fold into each other, right? And that indicates that there's a giving and receiving, right? This is a symbol for giving and receiving on an emotional level. So it's a constant, like I help you, but I'm also able to receive help from others, right? I'm able to receive support. So, you know, being able to get, you know, someone to help you on an emotional level is very important with Cancer, you know, to let yourself be vulnerable, to let yourself be open enough so that you can be receiving that emotional support. And for some of us, that's really easy. And for some of us, that's really hard, you know, and it depends on how you grew up. It depends on what your role models were growing up. It depends on whether it was safe to be vulnerable with your parents or with your caregivers. And so Cancer is that kind of energy where it really depends on your childhood in a way, whether you're capable of opening up in that way, in that vulnerable way. And that's something that we've been trying to learn over the last 18 months, right? The last 18 months were very much about learning how to let ourselves be more open and more vulnerable, and more the ability to receive support from others, and the ability to connect to our emotional body and be authentic with ourselves around that. And so this eclipse is really, in a sense, the last eclipse in that in that Cancer energy. And so this gives us, for the next 6 months, that gives us this sense of like, okay, I'm ready now to complete that journey, right? I'm ready now to complete that journey that's connected with self-care, that's connected with receiving support, you know, allowing myself to be vulnerable, connecting on an emotional level, having a safety zone, having a home, having a inner home, right? All of that. Okay, so yeah, so then Deb is saying, oh my God, I will be in for a wild ride, Sonia. I have my sun at 0 degrees, third house with Mercury right there at 4 degrees. My natal moon at 3 degrees Virgo. Okay, so you have a lot of hitters, Deb. Yeah. So, I mean, I think when you have a lot going on with an eclipse, it just means that there's a lot that this eclipse is moving for you. And it's going to be a very powerful vehicle to move something forward, especially with a North Node eclipse. So the best thing you can do is, when you have a lot of points that are happening, if there's a lot impacted in your natal chart, is to make sure that you really relax into it, that you allow yourself to let that play out. Because eclipses, remember, eclipses create uncertainty in us and create this nervousness in us, right? Of like, oh my God, am I going to be okay? Oh my God, is this going to be, you know, what's going to happen next, you know? So we need to give ourselves permission during eclipse season to really relax into whatever is occurring and going with the energy current. You know, think of it like a current, like in the ocean, right? Like when you're in the ocean, you step into it and you start to swim, and the wave comes, right? What do? You let yourself go with that wave rather than trying to fight the wave, right? Because the moment you start to fight the wave, you're going to drown, or maybe almost drown, right? So it doesn't feel good when we fight a wave. So don't fight it, right? Don't fight anything, and get yourself really centered within yourself and know you're going to be okay, because eclipses are always something that gives us the opportunity to get to that next level of our evolution. So that's the beauty of it, right? So if we look at Deb here, we have, yes, 0 degree Pluto, 3 degree moon, 0 degree sun. So basically the eclipse is on your sun, Deb, right? And it's on your Mercury as well. So of course, this eclipse this is huge for you, Deb, right? I mean, this is definitely going to be a initiation or moving forward into, you know, it's connected to your third house. So it's connected to teaching, or it's connected to learning something, or it's connected to sharing yourself in a more a vulnerable way, maybe in a way where you're, you know, able to give and receive from others, where it's not just about, you know, giving, but it's also, it's like that two-way street, right? And then squaring Pluto, of course, there natally you have that as well, right? So this is not just with this eclipse, you're used to this, that there is sort of like sometimes feeling disempowered when it comes to, you know, your sharing, or when it comes to, you know, people in your life, you know, that you're having, maybe there's some tension that gets created, and there's a part of you that's very perfectionistic, right, with that moon Pluto. So that perfectionism sometimes gets in the way of you actually letting yourself be you, and letting yourself be vulnerable, and letting yourself just share from the heart and share from the emotional place, right? Because that Pluto gets sometimes like, nah, can't do that. You know, we got to do it perfectly. We have to have all of our ducks in a row before we can do that, right? So this eclipse reflects that as well, you know, that there is that challenge, you know, is something that there's an invitation to overcome that challenge, to really let yourself fully step into your feeling body and fully share from that place authentically, right? And to surrender and let go. Okay, let's see what else we got here. So Rosie's saying Venus in Cancer, 7th house, Libra, Aries, 3rd house, 10th house. Ooh. Oh my God, that's so much. I'm starting to feel overwhelmed just reading that. Rosie, I'm going to take your question later, because I'd like to move forward to the next eclipse, to the last eclipse, so we have time to talk about everything. I hope that makes sense. Sorry, Rosie, but I won't forget you. I will take care of you, I promise. All right, so let's look at the last eclipse, which is the lunar eclipse in, let's see, lunar eclipse on July 5th in, lunar eclipse on July 5th in Capricorn, Cancer. So here we have a lot of planets in Capricorn with this eclipse, right? And they're all sort of like lined up with each other. I mean, the moon is within 10 degrees of Jupiter. And then we have, of course, the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, and Saturn is starting to join in again, right? Because Saturn at this point has moved back into Capricorn on July 1st, right? So there's this sense that we're just like, we're back to where we were at the beginning of the year, in a sense, right? Because at the beginning of the year, we had Saturn in Capricorn with Pluto conjunct and Jupiter there as well. So we're kind of like back in this place of like, whoa, there's a lot going on, and we're really being very focused. But this time, you know, it feels a tiny bit different, because the South Node is no longer in Capricorn. So the South Node is now in Sagittarius. So there might be a little bit more flexibility here. And because these planets are retrograde as well, all of them, we're also going to experience it as more of an internal process that we're really needing to do with ourselves. So there's a lot of, you know, this summer has a lot of retrograde stuff going on, right? Like with this eclipse, we'll have Neptune retrograde already as well. Venus is direct again, but Mercury is still retrograde as well. So there's a lot of retrograde phases that we're experiencing this summer, which means that there's a lot of introspective stuff and a lot of processing that we need to be doing on an individual and on a collective level. And so this eclipse here, let me just see, I wrote down some notes for this. Yes, so with this eclipse, we want to take a look at Saturn and the moon in our own natal charts, right? And then also the houses where the eclipse lands. So in this case, in my case, it's 3rd house and 9th house. And then in terms of the moon, that's the 1st house, and Saturn is the 8th house, right? So as you can see, some of the houses here are being sort of repeated in my chart. So we take a look at that these areas of life are definitely impacted for that eclipse. But one thing that I think is really interesting about this eclipse, which I need to mention, is that two things actually. On January 6, 2019, we had the first eclipse in the Capricorn Cancer polarity, which was a solar eclipse in 15.5 degrees of Capricorn. Now, this eclipse is a lunar eclipse in Capricorn in 13.5 degrees. So in the degrees, very close, which means that this solar eclipse in January 2019 is almost like that was the beginning of that eclipse cycle, and this is the end of that eclipse cycle. And there's something that's coming to a culmination, right? Because this is a full moon. The first one was a new moon. This one is a full moon. So something has come to a culmination. So something around those areas of your life where these eclipses are taking place, wherever you have 13.5 degrees of Capricorn and Cancer in your natal chart, those areas of life, something is being fulfilled there, right? And then the last time there was a lunar eclipse in 13.5 degrees of Capricorn was about 19 years ago in July of 2001. So that's also interesting, because if we think back to July of 2001, we can get a sense for, what occurred around that time, what was important to us around that time, and what did we try to balance out in our lives at that time. And there's a similarity to what we're doing now. It will be different, of course, but first of all, because we're 19 years older, and then also because the planets, the transiting planets, are differently situated than they are this year, right? So it's a little different, but the houses that are impacted are the same. So we can get a sense for, if you can remember, right? If you can remember July 2001 or the second half of 2001, right? From July until December. So that would be what we're kind of like trying to look at. Like what was the feel like at that time for you? Where were you trying to expand, or where were you trying to, learn certain things or understand certain things a little bit better? Who were the people that were important that you needed to connect to? What was important to let go of, or to sort of restructure, not restructure, but to kind of look at and see where maybe there are certain stories or belief systems that need to be, changed up a bit, that are no longer, something around our cultural conditioning, right? I mean, 2001 was the year of 9/11, right? So that was definitely a year where we were dealing with a lot of that religious, people with different religions and different cultural backgrounds were sort of like shunned or ostracized or were judged. And there was a reason for that also, because there were violent acts. But Jupiter in the South Node in Sagittarius, is very much about this sense of the South Node in Sagittarius is the sense that there's like a belief system or something that we're holding on to for safety, so that we can feel okay in the way we identify with ourselves and the world. And that's what creates, religious fanaticism, and that's what creates judgment towards other religious groups. That's what creates judgment towards other cultures that we're not familiar with. And so that's where this comes from, the sense of like, people wanting safety and knowing that they are okay with their own cultural conditioning and who they are. And if someone is different from that, then, there needs to be a separation, because then that's not safe for me. And so that's something that we're sort of like definitely experiencing, with the moon nodes in Gemini, Sagittarius, like that. So just something to look at for this eclipse. So let's see. where do we have the moon and Saturn in our chart, right? So the first house will be impacted here, my personal goals, or who I am as a caregiver, or as a mother, or as a as an emotional being, and the moon in my chart is very important too, because it's part of a, if you have a planet that's part of a T-square, or that's part of a yod, part of a big aspect within your natal chart, then that planet is going to be a planet that will be very important in your chart. So it would be important then also, when this planet gets emphasized, it gives you the opportunity to really work with that energy. My moon is part of a yod, so it's very important in my chart. So this gives me an opportunity with this solar eclipse and the following lunar eclipse to really work with that energy, in a more conscious way. And then Saturn, of course, is in my 8th house with intimate relationships. So I got to take a look at that too and see like what's working for me here, and what isn't. Okay, so Ari is saying, would you say moon in my 4th or 5th, Saturn in the 6th? Well, your moon is on the cusp of the 4th and the 5th, right? So I would read it in both houses. Whenever a planet is on the cusp, especially if it's not yet in the next house, right? If it's at the end of a house. So you could say, like here, for example, my sun, right, is in 25 degrees of Taurus, and my cusp of the house is at 26, which that's very much on the cusp. You can see the line, if you look at this, the line of that sun is right here next to that line here. But it's still in the 7th house, not yet in the 8th. So I read my sun in both houses. I read it in the 7th and the 8th. Some astrologers will read it in the 8th because they say it's so close that it's already in the 8th. But I will read it in both houses because I just feel like that's fair. Okay, so I would say, Ari, your moon 4th and 5th house. And then Saturn definitely in the 6th house, yeah. And then, but it's in Aquarius. Sonia, can you remind me what the yod is about? Okay, one second. So let me just quickly see what Ari is talking about here. Let's see. So Ari, I have your chart here. So you're talking about this particular eclipse in terms of the moon and Saturn, right? Yes. So in terms of that they are being impacted with this eclipse because of the rulerships, yeah. So with this eclipse, let's see, it will take place in your 4th and 10th house, right? That's the axis. So home and public world, right? That's the balance that we're looking for. And then the moon, of course, is also in the 4th and 5th in Aquarius. So that's connected to like-minded people and the things that in terms of your career, because of course the moon rules the Cancer, which is in your 10th house, right? So there's a needing to connect to like-minded people in a way where you feel safe, but also and authentic, but also in a way where you can fully express yourself, right? Where you can the 5th house is self-expression and leadership, right? And then your Saturn being in the 6th house, that means that in connection to your 4th house, or in connection to what's happening in your home area or with family, that's going to impact your day-to-day experience, your day-to-day work, your day-to-day health routines. So there's something in your day-to-day that you might have to plug into your day-to-day, what you're already doing, that's connected to family and to your home. So you're going to have to do that. Plus, there's a balance that you have to create there. Does that make sense, Ari? Okay, so then let's just see. So Tanya was asking me about the yod. Yeah, the yod is basically an aspect where there's 3 planets involved. In my case, it's Saturn, Moon, and Chiron who are involved in the yod. 2 of these planets make a sextile to each other. Chiron and Saturn are making a sextile, a 60-degree orb, a 60-degree aspect, which is an opportune aspect. But both of these planets make an quincunx or an inconjunct to my moon, right? And you can see here 19 degrees, 20 degrees, 19 degrees, 19 degrees, right? Very, very close. That's a very close orb. And a quincunx is a 150-degree aspect, which means it's either a health aspect or it's an emotional aspect where we feel very uncomfortable, where we feel something's not lining up, where it's like, it's not even like this, where it's like with a square, where it's like two different energies that are just kind of like not competitive with each other. But with an inconjunct, it's like this. It's like, doesn't even meet at all, right? Like with a square, at least the planets meet somehow. But with an inconjunct, it's like complete mismatch. So we feel uncomfortable with an inconjunct or with a quincunx. There's this constant feeling uncomfortable and needing to adapt, and something not being in alignment with each other. So if the moon is the focus point of this yod, right, of these two inconjuncts or these two quincunxes, this is what we call the finger of God, because both of these inconjuncts are pointing towards the moon, right? And so then that means there needs to be a lot of awareness and attention given to this planet. This planet needs our attention. So my moon, my emotional state needs a lot of attention. I need to do a lot of self-care. I need to really deal with my feeling body. I need to deal with my feeling fluctuations or with my hormonal stuff. You know, moon in Scorpio can be connected to the sex organs or hormones and stuff. So there's a lot of needing to pay attention there and giving it a lot of care. And of course, with the aspect of Chiron in the 6th house, there's some kind of health issue there, right? Which is that I can't have children, right? So it's connected to that. So there's a lot of needing to really pay attention to the planet that is being looked where the aspect goes towards. All right, so let's move on, because it's already 1 o'clock and we want to kind of get to a closure here, right? Let me just see if somebody said something important. So could you just give us a sense of what to prepare for and pay more attention to? Not specific questions, just what you feel intuitively to share with me. So Jasmine, do you mean like in general what to prepare for, or in particular for you? Because we can let me do this. Let me answer this in general, and then if we have time, I'll also answer it for you in particular. Okay? Because the truth is we don't have much time left. So I would say in general, what we really need to prepare for is we need to take a look at how are we moving with our masculine energies, right? The doing energies, the physical energies, and then also our level of anxiety, or our level of the ability to turn inwards and giving us space and time, right? And to trust. It's very important for us to move through this eclipse season in a way where we can learn how to connect with ourselves in such a way that we can trust ourselves. Because the outside world is not the place where we want to put our trust in right now. Where we really want to put our trust in is in ourselves. And if we don't know how to do that, now is the time to learn to do that. This is the time, because this year is really, in general, because these eclipses, of course, they're the beginning of like a 6-month cycle, right? So this means for the rest of the year, right? Because 6 months will end at the end of the year. So this year, in a sense, or the rest of the year, is very much about how can we manage ourselves? How can we manage trusting ourselves, trusting our intuition? How can we manage our own self-care? How can we manage being centered within ourselves and being self-reliable and responsible, right? And how can we trust that we are going to be where we need to be when we need to be there? And how can we trust that we're not going to be where we don't want to be, where we don't want to be there, right? So it's really a matter of knowing that on a soul level, because remember, eclipses very much connect us to our soul's journey. On a soul level, there is a collaboration that our soul has with our persona, right? So there is Jazz as the persona, or Sonia as the persona, and then there is my soul and Jazz's soul, right? And that soul collaborates with the persona. And the more we can tune into that collaboration, the more we are going to be where we need to be safe. The more we're going to experience what we need to experience to evolve and to expand, right? And this is where that relationship is very important, that relationship that we have with ourselves and with our soul selves. And of course, the mind plays also a big part in this right now, because with the North Node in Gemini, the mind is very strongly activated. And so we need to make sure that we use the mind in such a way that it serves that connection that we have with our soul, right? The mind needs to be in service to that collaboration. So that means, what do I say to myself? What's my inner dialogue? What do I talk about? What do I share with others? What do I listen to? Do I listen to things that are healthy for me, that are helpful to me, that support me? Do I listen to things that make me anxious, that make me feel disempowered, that make me feel unsupported, right? So these are some of the things that we really need to be conscious about. Like, how can we have either an inner dialogue or an external dialogue, which is speaking and listening, always listening included, right? Where this is healthy and supports our collaboration with our soul and with our higher self. That's very important. Okay, so that's really the gist of these eclipses, if I had to put it into like one paragraph. Okay, all right, so let's move on here. Let's go. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes, if that's okay with you guys. If you can just hang in there before we get to our questions. I just want to talk for 2 minutes about a couple of things in regards to my website, things that I just want to share with you guys. Does that work for you, or shall we skip that? How are you guys doing? Are you hanging in there? Yes? Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, I appreciate it. All right, so let's share this for just a very brief, quick moment. So this webinar page, I just wanted to share very quickly that I do have the Moon Node webinar that we talked about last month is still available for those of you who haven't seen it yet. This is definitely something that will support you also with the eclipses, because we talk in great detail here about that polarity between Gemini and Sagittarius. Then the other thing, of course, that's also of great support would be the Jupiter and Capricorn webinar, because we talk about what Jupiter is doing in Capricorn right now. And Jupiter, of course, plays a big role in particular with this lunar eclipse that's coming up this week. And then also, of course, because of the moon nodes being in, the south node being in Sagittarius, Jupiter also plays a big role in that regard. And then I put my 2020 webinar on sale right now. That's at a big discount. So if you guys haven't seen that yet, the preview for 2020, feel free to take a look at that. That's on sale currently. Okay, and that's all I really wanted to say about that. And then I just wanted to quickly also share the this page here with you guys. This is also attached to your emails, the webinar page and this page. By the way, the webinar page can be accessed via the services tab on the website. If you click on that arrow, there's a bunch of things that will pop up, and one of them says webinars, and you click on that link. And then here, this is your account page, where you can click into, sign in, log into your account. And here in your account page, I just want to point out that this is all your content that gets posted on the website that you can just click on and see, so you don't have to look for it on the blog page. I mean, you can access this via the blog page as well, but here it's all in one place. Then you have your courses are here. your services would be the monthly forecasting forums if you are a star member. So you can access that via here if you want to ask questions in advance. That's the button to follow, and just follow the steps there. Then here are all your discounts. If you're a star member, you can get discounts for the readings and everything and coaching sessions. And then, oh, I also want to say with the coaching sessions, you get a 15% discount for coaching sessions if you're a star member. If you wanted to get some support throughout eclipse season, just make sure if you don't have the discount code for the 15%, if you don't know where that is, then please email me and I will send it to you. Okay, I'm not gonna post it here today because not everybody's a star member. But if you do need that discount code, it's available to you via the email that I send out every month. When you join as a star member every month, the discount code is inside that email. But some of you might not check that email every time, so you might miss it. But if you want me to send it to you, I can send it to you. All right. Okay, Ari has to run. Okay, so this morning was on your site going to set up a session but couldn't find the package version. Okay, yes, if you want to book a package, then please email me, because the package is something that I have to send you an invoice for. Okay, that's not on my website currently. That's just something I'm invoicing you for. And the packages are definitely, they're more than 15% off. Okay, so if you book one session as a star member, you get 15% off. If you book a package, you get more than 15% off. And I can send you, oh, actually attached in the email that I send out is a tiny little PDF that shows you what the discounts are exactly for the packages. So just click on that attachment for coaching sessions, and that will show you what you can get. Okay. So yeah, so if you want to just do a single session, just let me know and then I can send you the discount code. Okay. All right. So then if you want to change your subscription, you can do that here in that tab. If you want to edit your account information, you can do that here. Your billing address and your payment method. If you need to change your payment method, please remember to only have one payment method in there at a time. So when you add a new one, delete the old one, please, because my system gets confused for some reason, even though it doesn't tell you here to delete it. I encourage you to do that so that nothing happens where you get stopped in your membership. Okay, so next slide here is just want to briefly mention that, of course, you have soul-based astrology courses available. If you want to learn more about astrology, if you want to dig deeper, I recommend taking a look at these. Then, of course, there's a ton of readings also available that you can do with me, and I actually I created a new spreadsheet for that. I attached that to the email as well, so you can see here. If you're a star member, you get a discount for each of these readings, and you can see this is the regular fee and this is the star membership fee. If you're not a star member, then you pay the one that's X'd out here. For those of you who've had a whole life reading or a combination reading already with me, you can book a follow-up reading. So follow-up readings are only for people who've already had full readings with me, like more than an hour reading with me. So if you've only had a soul purpose reading, you can't get a follow-up reading yet. You're going to have to do a whole life reading first. Okay, this is only because of how much time it takes me to prepare a chart. And there's a lot of work that goes into, preparing a reading for when I do a reading. And so I need to charge for the time of the preparation as well as for the time of the reading. I hope that makes sense. Okay. And then let's see, what else do I want to say? Okay. So that's all I wanted to share in terms of my website. So let me just quickly say here that, thanks so much, of course, for joining. If you have any questions in regards to memberships, definitely always feel free to reach out. This page will also be attached to the email and to the recordings as well. So feel free to take a look at that page if you have questions. And I also want to mention the next forecasting forum will be on July 12th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And there will be an early bird special available until July 9th. But if you're already a star member, of course, then you're automatically registered. So being a star member is definitely the cheapest way to join the monthly forecasting forum, because you're not only getting the forums, you're also getting a ton of other stuff with it, right? And discounts and stuff. And then let's see, we'll talk about Mercury and Chiron station phase, which will be July 8th until July 17th for Mercury station, and June 29th until July 21st for the Chiron station phase. And then we'll have the Chiron retrograde phase that will start at 9.5 degrees of Aries and move back to 5.5 degrees of Aries between July 11th and December 15th. We'll talk about how that's going to impact us in terms of our own wounds and our own healing process. And then Mercury will go direct on July 12th at 5.5 degrees of Cancer, which will be in a square with Chiron, right? So there's something around that direct motion with Mercury where we need to make some adjustments around our healing process and how we're connecting to other people and what we talk about and what we say to ourselves and all that good stuff, right? Okay, so that's a little bit about next week's forum. So let's talk about the questions that we have for this month. So I only got one question in advance this time around. So we can definitely also answer some other questions from some other people if you have the time to hang in here, if you're not too tired. So Julianne was asking about, with regards to her chart being a triple Gemini, she wants to have some guidance and insight about the upcoming eclipse cycle. And so I pulled up her chart so we can take a look at her chart while we're answering that question, because I figured that would be a little bit easier for us than to kind of get a sense for what I'm talking about here. So Julianne, this coming eclipse, this coming lunar eclipse, right, is going to be in 15.5 degrees of Sagittarius. So since you have, 15.5 degrees sort of like lands in your first house and in your seventh house, right? And it's not actually connecting with any of your natal planets in a funny way, right? Because the orb or the degree would have been between 10 and 21 degrees, right? And so 7 degrees is too early, and these are also too early. And then 22 is already too late. So what we're really looking at with this eclipse for you, even though you have a lot of planets in Gemini, we're really looking just at the first and seventh house and to look to see, your relationships with other people, right? Like, what are some stories that you tell yourself about other people and the relationships that you have with other people, right? How can you learn to listen to yourself more fully, right? Because here with Gemini in the first house, there's a needing to listen to yourself, not just speak, but also listen. And of course, Mercury is in your 12th house, so there's a need to connect intuitively to your soul, to your soul self as well, and to have this beautiful listening to your soul and to that collaboration with the universe and with your soul. And Jupiter, of course, being part of the moon placement here, that your natal Jupiter is in the 4th house, conjunct the South Node and Pluto. So definitely something also in connection with your upbringing or with your mother, where you need to let go of some kind of stories or beliefs that or conditioning that you have enjoyed growing up, things that you believe because of maybe what you've experienced, growing up with your family or with your mom, and that's maybe why there are certain belief systems in place in connection to your current one-on-one relationships that you have with other people. So there's something to kind of be aware of that. And it's not about judging yourself about that. It's not about making yourself wrong about that. It's really more about noticing it and going, oh, yes, that's something I keep telling myself. Or, oh yeah, I do believe that. I believe that, like, I don't know. I believe that people, want to criticize me, let's say, because, you have all of this in Virgo, right? So when you connect with people, maybe you're kind of careful so that you don't get criticized, right? Could be. I'm not saying that's exactly how it plays out for you. Does any of this resonate, what I'm sharing here about, connection with your upbringing or with your mom, or connection with, stories and belief systems you tell yourself, like in connection with relationships, and that balance here, right? Like how do you relate to other people? What role do you play? What role do other people play? And maybe in connection with other people, there's a need to allow there to be, more of an organic connection, where people just come in that need to come in, but also allow people to leave that need to leave, right? Where we have the South Node, there's also a place where we're feeling a lot of flow in both directions. There's a receiving and a letting go, of sorts, right? So there might be people coming into your life, and there might be people exiting your life, and that's okay. Does all of this make sense, Julianne? Totally. Very attached to my mom. Okay. I'm trying to be more empowered. People don't want to leave. That is my issue. People don't want to leave. That is my issue. Okay. Yes. So take a look at these stories that you're holding on to, because maybe these stories make you feel like that's you, and that makes you feel more safe in terms of who you are, because it's familiar, right? Like whenever we feel familiar with something that we tell ourselves, it almost feels a little bit like, oh yeah, that's it, I know it, that's me. Even if it's something that's maybe not serving you, right? But still, if it's familiar and you know it, it can sometimes feel very much like, oh yeah, I got this. Because even if it's something that's challenging, I can deal with it because I know it, it's familiar, right? So we want to kind of like look at these things and see, how can I, maybe connect more with myself, or trust myself more, right? So that I can let go of some of these fears. Exactly. Letting go of the fear around your mom, right? Or letting go around the fear of your relationships, like whether they're gonna, be there or not be there, right? So yeah, definitely. And to just trust, right? One of the things we want to do, especially when Pluto is involved, right? And you have Pluto on the South Node. So this is a big theme. It's a life theme for you, right? Pluto asks us to trust, to surrender to something that's bigger than you, to really trust in your higher self, or in the universe, or to trust in the God Almighty, and to just say, you know what, I'm giving this over to something that knows better, or that knows more than me, than the little me, right? So there's a bigger you and there's a little you, right? And so you're giving it over to the bigger you. And so that's very, very important with Pluto, to give it over, to not get attached to the little you, meaning the ego, or the persona, right? Because the persona that we've developed over time, from our conditioning and our childhood and our experiences that we've had, that persona is a snitch part of who we are. But very often we get so identified with that persona that we can't see that there's more than just that persona. But if you go and if you open yourself up, you open your mind, and you allow yourself to see beyond the persona, that beyond I am Sonia, right? Or beyond I am Julianne. If you let yourself look beyond that, you can actually see that you are much more than whatever this persona represents, because you have an awareness that is so much bigger than that, right? It's bigger than all your belief systems. It's bigger than all the feelings that you've ever had. It's bigger than your physical body. It's bigger than every thought that you've ever had, right? So there's just something there that encompasses all of it that's much bigger. So, and Pluto invites us to go to that place, you know, to really surrender to that higher place that is fully powerful, because the power lies in the power does not lie in the persona, right? As the persona, we experience a lot of disempowerment, actually, right? We experience a lot of pain, we experience a lot of loss. That's what the persona, the little me or the human experiences, right? But the part of you that's more than just that human, or that's more than just that persona, is very empowered, has all the power, because there is, everything is okay and everything is always possible, right? So if you're able to go beyond that, that's how we can get beyond the fear and beyond the attachment. Okay, so let's see. So remember that sometimes, you know, when we answer these questions, it can be really helpful for other people as well, right? Like, because what I say to Rosie might be really informative for somebody else as well. So if you're watching this as a recording, I just want to encourage you to keep watching it. All right, so Jazz wanted to know about the eclipses. So Jazz, so you have, let's see, where is Sagittarius in your chart? Okay, that's in your 8th house and in your 2nd house. So you have the same houses as me, just opposite. So kind of like how Debbie has it as well, I guess. So basically for you, it's very much about finding a balance between other people's resources and your own, and to focus and to work a little bit harder towards, you know, connecting with yourself, honoring yourself, listening to yourself, communicating from a place that's powerful for you, and that actually honors you, right? Honors your talents, honors what you have to share, honors who you are, and who you want to connect with, right? And all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of like, and then there's a need to take a look at the stories that you tell yourself about your intimate relationships, you know, or intimate connections, or other people's resources, like, you know, other people's money, for example, you know, that you share with other people. So stories that you tell yourself about that, be good to kind of like tune in and see, like, what are my beliefs here? Or what do I tell myself about that? You know, and how can I maybe look at that from a different perspective, you know, and maybe I can look at that in a different light. And then let's see, the solar eclipse. Let's see, do we have anything in, so it's squaring your Chiron, actually. That lunar eclipse, sorry, the lunar eclipse is squaring your Chiron and your Pluto. Okay, so that's important. So let's take a look at that. So because you have Chiron and Pluto opposite each other, right, Jazz? You are born in that generation where there has been a lot of needing to heal and be really compassionate with yourself around your disempowerments that you've experienced, or feeling more empowered through allowing yourself to really tap into your intuitive self, and to just kind of find the balance between your intuitive self and your discernment self, you know, the part of you that needs to discern, and the part of you that needs to connect to your intuition, and to kind of find a balance between the two. And definitely being compassionate with yourself is a very, very big part of that. You need to learn to be very compassionate and very kind and very understanding with yourself, especially when it comes to being connected out there in the world with like-minded people, when it comes to being out there in the world with a group of people, or with a tribe or a certain community of people. You know, there's a need to allow yourself to choose something that really works for you, choose something that's different from what other people are doing, and to be compassionate with yourself with that. So this eclipse, because it's squaring Chiron and Pluto, there's a sense that you need to find a way for tuning in with yourself at times, and not letting the noise, the outside noise, distract you too much from your own healing process or from your own ability to stay empowered or feel empowered. So it's about quieting the noise a little bit. Does that make sense, Jasmine? Yeah. And then in terms of the solar eclipse in 0 degrees of Cancer, that one is very much connected to your 2nd house as well. And that, let's see, is that making any aspects? Let's see, cardinal signs, 0 to 5. Yes, so that eclipse, well, your Mercury's in 6 degrees of Aries, so it's almost a little bit outside of that orb, so you might still feel it a tiny bit, but it's not really within the orb. But then we have Jupiter in 28 degrees of Pisces. So what I didn't mention earlier on, because I got distracted, was that we have with this solar eclipse, we have to look 0 to 5 degrees of cardinal signs, but also 25 to 29 degrees of mutable signs as well. So if you have anything within that, which is your Jupiter, right? So your Jupiter is going to make a square to the solar eclipse. So there's something around that you want to really expand, and you want to be very optimistic, and you want to be really moving forward with something. And the eclipse, the solar eclipse in Cancer, though, tells you to kind of like take it slowly. Don't, your optimism is wonderful, but it's not of service to you if you overwhelm yourself, and it's not of service to you if you go too fast. It's not of service to you if you step into a risk zone too quickly or too far out, because that will just propel you to get scared and to move backwards instead of forward. So it's really a matter of like learning to take it easy, slowly, do what's really comfortable to you. Really pay attention to yourself, pay attention to honoring yourself. So I would say both of these eclipses are very much about honoring yourself. You really need to learn to honor yourself. And then the 3rd lunar eclipse is in 13.5 degrees of Capricorn, Cancer, and so that will be in your 3rd and 9th house. So that's sort of like a culmination or a finishing up of what's been going on the last 18 months in terms of your, what you've been connecting with in terms of learning things or exploring or expanding your horizons, and, where you focused your energy, where you have created sort of like maybe a community that you feel like a connection with, an emotional connection. So there's something around that that's coming to fruition and to sort of a finish in a way. So I think that, and let me just see where Mars in Cancer. So Mars in Cancer is going to be also in your 11th house and in your 10th and 11th house. So mostly 11th house, I think. Yeah. So Neptune being there as well. So it's important for you to keep connecting with like-minded people who have sort of more of a spiritual approach to life, who have more of an intuitive approach to life, and that will really support you in kind of slowing down a little bit and maybe getting more grounded, getting more connected also with your own higher self, and also the healing process that is ongoing for you around your intuition and around your feeling a little bit different because you're sensitive, being sensitive in the world, and connecting with other sensitive people, very beneficial for you, right? Just keep connecting with other sensitive people and not judge that, not judge people for their sensitivity, not judge yourself for your own sensitivities. It's all good. You're a sensitive person, so what? So that's, I hope that answers your question, Jazz. Was that helpful? And then we have Rosie. Rosie, just remind me, can you remind me what you were asking me before? Because I can't remember and I don't want to scroll down. So, because I don't want to be reading the whole chat window. I can't remember anymore what you were asking me about. The second eclipse, the solar eclipse. Okay, excellent. So the solar eclipse is in 0 degrees of Cancer, which is, yes, so that's very close to your Venus, right? In your 7th house. And then it's also squaring, that's squaring your moon nodes, Rosie, in Aries, Libra. And let's see, what else is it doing? And then your moon is in the 2nd house. So this would indicate, so the solar eclipse would sort of indicate that there is a wanting to move forward, or wanting to have a new beginning of some sort with around relationships, one-on-one relationships with people, something where you can feel an emotional connection, something where you can feel the sense of family and connecting as family. But it's very important that you keep honoring yourself and that you keep setting healthy boundaries, because the moon is in your 2nd house, right? And because it's squaring your moon nodes, this eclipse is going to be really important for you. It's going to be like a turning point. And it's going to be, you know, a turning point in your soul's journey, you know, really connecting, letting yourself be vulnerable. You know, it's important that you let yourself be vulnerable emotionally with other people, or that you let other people also be vulnerable with you, right? So, and by really honoring yourself, you're going to be able to feel more comfortable to either be vulnerable yourself, or to let other people be vulnerable too. And so that square to the moon nodes sort of like invites you to be courageous around vulnerability, and to find your way towards an equal connection out there in the world with other people, by not putting yourself one down or one up, right? But by letting yourself to just be completely equal with other people, right? And that happens through this ability to connect on a vulnerable level. I would say the 1st house, of course, has the 1st house in Capricorn is going to be important here too, because of it squaring the moon node. So bringing that vulnerability also to yourself, you know, letting yourself be vulnerable with yourself, and to not always have to be the strong one, to not always have to be the one who has it all together, who is in complete control of everything, but to just let yourself be a mess once in a while, you know, to give yourself permission to be a mess. Because the truth is, you know, like Cancer can be a mess, right? It's emotional. So let yourself be a mess once in a while. All right. So I'm moving home 17th of June. That's so relevant. Thank you. Gemini, Sun, Sagittarius rising too. So lots of learning coming. I need permission to be a mess. Yes. Yes, you do. Yeah. So just practice that. That'll be a really good practice for you. Okay. So then we have Tanya here. Tanya, are you still with us? Are you still here? Just wanted to make sure. Okay. So Tanya's last question, and then we're going to finish up. Deb, I think Deb has to leave. So she's saying timely form. Yeah. Okay, so Tanya, you were asking me about the eclipses for your chart, right? Let me just take a look and see what's most important to mention here. So the lunar eclipse is right here on the cusp of the 2nd and 8th house. Then the solar eclipse is, let's see, 0 degree of Cancer. The solar eclipse is in your 8th house. The North Node is in your 8th house. And then the other eclipse is also in your 8th and 2nd house. Okay, so that's easy, Tanya. Everything is in your 8th and 2nd house. So basically, pretty much what I shared about my own chart is also true for you, in a sense, Tanya, right? You know, it's important for you to focus on how to have really good communication with other people in your intimate relationships. When you share yourself, you know, how you express yourself, what it is that you say to yourself about your intimate relationships is also very important. to be sort of like more curious about other people, about the other person. And then in terms of the South Node in the second house and the eclipse is there as well, there's a sense that you need to really honor yourself, but also make sure that you pay attention to what stories you tell to yourself about yourself. What do you tell yourself about your own talents? What do you tell yourself about self-worth? What do you tell yourself about what you can receive in terms of worth from others, right? So all of that is pretty much the gist of eclipses for you. I hope this was helpful. We have to come to a stopping point. I went way over, so I apologize. Thanks for those of you who are still here. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Julianne is saying, thank you, Sonia, for everything. Always informative and generous with your time. Blessings to you and everyone. Tanya says, thank you. Jason says, thank you. Thanks for still being here, Jason. That was great. Okay. Thanks so much, guys. And if you watch this as a recording, thanks so much for hanging in there as well until the end. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you, or most of you, on July 12th. So have a fantastic eclipse season. If there's anything that you want to share with me, feel free to always give me feedback. You can send me an email to info@astrologercoach.com and just write feedback in the subject line. That would be great. And much love to all of you. And just remember to stay centered, stay connected to yourself, keep breathing, keep allowing the energies to move through you, and all is going to be well. Okay, trust that all is well. All right, much love to all of you.